right, so that 30-second countdown was a total accident. Just as we were getting live, everybody, I said I'm not going to do an intro countdown. We're going to jump right into it. And I forgot that StreamYard makes that automatic. So that happened. But what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Think Big podcast. We are on episode 126. That means 126 weeks in a row without a miss. And tonight I'm excited because you know what it is. You know the deal is normally it is myself or it is Sam or it's the two of us. And we are very guarded and very selective about who we ever bring on this stage and who we ever put in front of you. But tonight we have an absolute freaking legend. And we're going to be excited about sharing him with you. We're going to be diving into his story. We're going to be talking about some things coming here in the near future. We're going to be talking about some things to avoid in business when you're getting started. So if you're new to entrepreneurship, if you are in those first 3 months, if you're in the trenches right now, you showed up at the perfect time. And tonight we're going to be doing some massive giveaways. So I want to say this before we get started. If you see that a friend of yours is not here, send this episode out to a friend right now. If this is, you've been here before, you already know what the deal is. You know the sort of value that you get on this episode. Do not wait until the end of the episode. I want you to send it out right now. Get your friends inside here. The more people that we have online tonight, the more we are going to be giving away. So it's going to increase your odds of winning one of the special giveaways. But I'm going to let Sam tonight introduce our guest. And Sam, you're up, brother.
Dude, I'm excited, man. We're pretty guarded and we're like religiously against bringing on guests. I think we went over a year without a single guest, and then this year we decided we're like, you know what? I love Marlon, and I think Marlon loves me, but I think sometimes we're like, we just need another human being to come in, but we're so wary of bringing on the wrong people to take or giving the wrong people a pedestal. And it was funny. Strat, you don't know this, but I'll tell you this right now. When Marlon and I decided early this year, maybe it was late last year, but early this year, we're like, cool, we want to have a guest list. We want to have like our hit list of our top 5, 10, 15 people that we want to bring on this year. Literally, you were probably the first one on both of our lists. And so
thank you.
Of course. Seriously, and so for people that don't know Stratton, it's funny because Stratton, you've been a very close friend to me for, I feel like, a really decent amount of time now. And I still think that relationship's still pretty young. A lot of people don't know this, a lot of people do know that I keep my circle extremely tight, and I'm very guarded with who I bring in because it affects my ability to go and achieve the goals that I want. And I'm very adamant about not having the wrong people, not having performers, not having guys who are pushing the needle, and most importantly, not having people who push me to be freaking good. And the cool thing is this, man, I am excited to be able to bring you to this circle because I feel that you've taken my circle and elevated it a lot higher. And so, guys, Stratton, a little bit, I'm going to give some highlights because I think you've got one of the coolest stories, especially because you're like 29 now.
I just turned 30, bro.
Just turned 30 a few weeks ago. Okay.
Like, so 2 weeks ago, I turned 30.
Welcome to the club.
Guys.
It's terrible, bro. I'm no longer like a young entrepreneur, bro. I'm a fucking old man. There's
you
no
don't
more
get the, you don't get the headlines,
knees
right?
start
like
telling you you're 30 yet? Have your kneecaps started telling you that?
Bro, my body's been telling me I've been 30 for the last like 5 years. My ankles hurt, my back hurts, my knees hurt, everything hurts.
Well, it's funny. So a lot of people, and guys, like this is, and me and Marlon have talked about this. We've talked about how I only hire people who come from a background of military, law enforcement, or sports. Stratton, being an excellent entrepreneur at 30, is still an extremely young age for entrepreneurship. He's a former, not just D1 football player. He went pro. You played for the NFL. And so the crazy thing is some of the excellence and the discipline that got you to, you know, the epitome of a field like that, or just such a high marker in sports, you've brought over into the world of business. You've crushed real estate. You've crushed wholesale. You've had multiple businesses and just the entrepreneurial side of launching services and products. And the stuff that you're working on now, I think is even bigger and better than anything you've ever done. You and I talked about this at dinner last night, where I'm like, you've got very, very much in front of you $100 million play in the next minimum, I would say 2 to 4 years. And so, guys,
I think it'll take 5 to 7, but that's the goal. It'll take 5 to 7, but I think I could hit the number. Okay,
you're just, he's being humble, guys. I know him very well. It'll be like a 3 or 4 year thing with him. But guys, give it up for Strat. Strat, give us a little bit of insight, because you are someone who you do so much. You've done so much wholesale. You own commercial properties. You own self storage. You've launched other businesses in the real estate space, like with virtual assistants. Now you're getting into some big private equity stuff, dude. Is there anything I'm missing right now?
I'm a dad and a
Hell
boyfriend.
yes.
Hell
I'd
yeah.
say those are probably like number 1 and 2. It's hard to make them number 1 and 2, but like that's what you got to do if you want to keep your family intact. If you're upset, I'm like autistically obsessive, and I feel like if you want to like identify a trait in someone who's going to be successful, they're autistically obsessive with things. I think
Bro,
that's like
Loki,
the number 1 thing that I want to see out of like my employees or like my friends who can like lock themselves in a cave or get obsessed about some random thing. Like I've been fucking working on a random AI shit all day because I wanted to build something out. And so it's like, okay, how can we like dial in, get this going? But the best entrepreneurs I've ever seen are just manic and obsessive. And I used to think it was like until I read like Tim Grover's book. Whichever his
win,
first one was.
winning. I think winning.
Or no, whichever is winning's the second one. Whichever the first one was, then I was like, okay, I'm not like psychotic because like nobody really thought like me. I have like a godfather who's exactly like me mentally, who is bro, the dude's fucking changing oil in his truck on Sunday afternoon because he like has to get it going and he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And like and we didn't know he was that wealthy growing up. I moved in with them when I was like 13, 14 years old, and I lived with them and my brothers up until I was like 17. And this man was so at 30 years old, he had a second company just to hunt wolves out of a helicopter to like tell you like the amount of wealth this guy has. And we never knew, like we got bitched at. I remember me and my brother were up at 5 a.m. one time because we had to like clean the boat and we got our asses fucking chewed because we're lazy pieces of shit because we woke up too late to like clean the boat. And then like just seeing him and my actual parents, like he would wake up, go work, be gone all day, randomly pop in on us, like if we because we'd go to like football practice, come home, and we'd have to do some type of fucking construction work or whatever. And he'd randomly pop up and like ride our ass of like, why is this job not done yet? Why does this look shitty? This should be done. You should be moving faster. Like, and it applied to everything else. And I want to say like that aspect of it translated toward now me and those siblings are all very entrepreneurial. And
Yep.
we all have like a very, I want to say even an autistic standard that you want to hold in everything that you do, because that's the only way to do it. And this dude leads a very large company in construction. So he like leads a bunch of rednecks essentially. And like what I gained from him culturally of he has an entire company full of hymns. All of them are like that crazy ass redneck motherfucker, bro. And he's like on them out there like pounding the drum every day, casting the vision. And like you like I got to see it from a young age and him grow this thing into this 100 million like multi-$100 million company has been really cool. That's kind of a tangent, but yeah.
Dude, that's
Wow,
sick.
dude.
Because I
Go for it,
mean, like,
Marlon.
so like that obsessive personality, people don't realize that's actually a pretty common trait amongst some of the greatest founders throughout history, not even just of our generation, is these people were hyper obsessive. And people actually who've worked with them, like the Steve Jobs of the world, right? Like they say actually working with these guys almost kind of sucked because they were so hyper aware of all the details within their business and they had a standard and they honored and held that standard, and you would be fired on the spot for not hitting that standard. It really was a non-negotiable. So you witnessed that. And what's cool is you have a background in sports where that standard, right? Having a standard in sports is something that's played out physically. It's something that you don't just talk about it. You've got to go and utilize it. And so when you were witnessing this with your uncle growing up, as you were coming up, obviously you were applying it into the sports world. Did you know you were going to apply it into entrepreneurship? Like, was that somewhere in the back of your head, or was it, how did this start to shape itself from you going from being an athlete into entrepreneurship? Kind of take me through that journey.
So both of my actual parents are both entrepreneurs. Like I came from not like a poor family at all. Like my dad owns his own electrical company. My mom ran and operated one of the larger adoption agencies in the country By
Out
no
here.
means that means she was rich, because adoption agencies operate at like a 1% margin, because it's just a bunch of people doing it out of the goodness of their heart.
Yep.
And listen to this terrible business model. So my mom, I'm adopted, and my two sisters are adopted. And so after my mom adopted my youngest sister, she started her own. She used to work at a bunch of them. So they will pay for a birth mother to fly out. They will put them up and house them for 6 months. Everything. And then, so let's say they invest $50,000. They can charge $55,000 to $60,000 to the adoptive family to adopt the child. Right? But there is no guarantee that that adoptive mother is going to actually put the baby up for adoption. And so you have a fallout rate of X%,
Oh,
that no matter what happens, you're just essentially out that 50 grand. And you're dealing with, I'm sorry, bro, if you're putting your kid up for adoption, you're not in a good place. You're probably a fucking psycho. Or like, very few people are in a great spot if that's what they're doing. They're just the
yeah.
most logical person to know, hey, I probably shouldn't have this kid. So I should probably like get them in a better situation. And so they're doing quite a few adoptions. But then like, I remember when, this is before me and Xena were essentially homeless. I remember calling my mom, like, and this is me just getting started, bitching about like a couple $100 in overhead for my company. And this is when I'm just getting started, like wholesaling. My mom's like, Stratton, I just had to take out a second mortgage on our house to cover my fucking payroll.
Damn.
And like, my parents never really talked to me about entrepreneurship or anything else like that. I just knew that they never had to call their boss really to get work off. My mom ran that, and she was department chair of Utah Valley University of all multimedia. So like, that's what my mom did. And then my dad has an electrical company. And so like, during the summer times, it was whenever we would travel. It's not like my parents had to like really ask for permission to go anywhere. We just kind of like go places. And so I grew up, I would say, middle class. If I look back at it, we didn't become like upper middle class up until like I was like almost out of high school.
Yep.
And that was because like my dad got absolutely decimated in 2008 with his electrical company, just like the rest of America, because a lot of his business, and this taught me about customer concentration. He serviced a lot of Mormon churches. And so 99% of their revenue came from the Mormon church, because they do all the rough in new construction for all the Mormon churches in the state of Utah, like they do in the majority of it. And when the Mormon church pulled back, essentially all of their revenue was wiped out overnight, and there was nothing they could do. And so that taught me about like customer concentration at a very young age. And so it's like all these like random like things that you see like over time that finally like apply to you as you become an adult.
What's
So-
you ever see the movie Slumdog Millionaire?
I've never seen it.
It's like a movie where it's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but like the Indian version, and this kid gets on the show, and somehow all of the questions he has to answer relate back to these seemingly random life experiences he had along the way. And so it's like, as you're describing your life, it's like Stratton was having these random life experiences that then would accumulate into becoming an entrepreneur. Because it's funny, I do enjoy watching your social media. Your stories are funny as hell, and then also randomly informative. Like it'll go from like you're trolling the internet to like, damn, I just learned something pretty high level when I'm watching through your stories. And one of the things that I witnessed from your stories, which you stand out inside, especially in the world of real estate, is a lot of investors, I call them deal doers, right? Like they just go out and they do deals, and nothing wrong with that. They're out making money, but they're not real entrepreneurs. They're not real business owners. They're not actually creating a business. Most people don't even fully understand what a business system and vehicle actually even looks like, let alone that it exists. And you were someone that I started to recognize, okay, he actually understands business at a pretty high level. And you also understand economics at like a pretty macro level, where you look at, it seems like the big picture. And so now I'm piecing together essentially how you started to get some of this perspective. So when you look at what you've been doing in real estate, was it always the goal to build something big? 'Cause I remember, by the way, and this, I think it was 2 years ago, you were out on Steve Trang's Real Estate Disruptors, and you were talking about how one of the mistakes you made early on was you set your goals too low. You set like, hey, I want to go make 6 figures. And you realize, had I been pointed at $1 billion, like the only mistake you made was thinking too small. So were you always interested in building business to scale, or like what started driving this desire for you to get into entrepreneurship of your own?
I just wanted to make six figures at the beginning. I just needed money to like feed me and my son essentially, and I just like didn't want
What
to be broke.
when did you have your son?
I had my son my senior year of college.
Oh damn! All right, so you're still pretty young.
Yeah, I was like 22.
Sheesh.
I was like
The thing
22 when I
about
had my son.
Stratton that people don't realize, especially like just looking at him because he's a young guy. To me, I still, you just turned 30, but I still feel like you're a dude in your 20s. Stratton's business acumen and his mindset and his approach to not just economics, but like Marlon, to your point, a lot of the people we follow, no matter like their positioning in the industry, it almost always feels like real estate investors giving investor commentary specific to real estate. I think Stratton is a founder and a CEO giving executive insight into the world of like someone whose horizons are broader than just real estate or just single family. And I think people can tend to forget, and this is one of the biggest compliments. I remember, Stratton, you and I, not last night, but we went to dinner a few weeks ago, and I told you one thing that surprised me the most about you is you've got more business life experience than most dudes who've been in the game for freaking 15, 20, 30 years.
Thank you.
Who are double our age. And the funny thing is, and this is one of the best things, guys, across the board, this is a huge thing I even look for in hiring. I look for people who were forced to grow or mature at a young age.
Yeah.
There is a level of responsibility that comes with that, and a level of like, it's more than, and we had this conversation last night when we were talking about A-level talent and how having A-level talent that you're responsible for will force you to get better. Bro, forget A-level talent. You had a child. You had a kid while you were in school, while you were in college. And like that forced you to massively grow and massively take on more responsibility than someone else who's at the time you were 21, 22 maybe?
I was like 22, but when I was in New Orleans the other day for the Super Bowl, we went down for a week to do a bunch of media stuff. It was really fun, but really hard at the same time. And full like ego stroke for me. I'm used to like being somebody. Whenever I have to go to a conference or anything, everybody will like know who I am, and I'll get a little bit of respect. Bro, that was the most Hunger Games shit I've ever done in my life. Nobody gave a fuck who I was. It was impossible to get like these people on this podcast. It was so hard. Very, very humbling, and I thank you guys for all of these compliments. But I was talking to one of my friends, and he was like, the one thing I respected about you is that you told me at this point, either I do it or we die. Because at that point, it was like either I do it or means, starve, and means, had like bananas and rice for a very long time and like Spam. And that's all I could afford to feed us. And so like that's just what we ate. At a point in time, I had to send my son to Utah with my parents for a couple months because I was like, I can't afford to like fucking feed this kid. And again, like my parents are amazing, and I wasn't trying to ask them for help. But then like my mom's like, I get to be with my grandbaby for 2 months in the summer. That's gonna be awesome. But that's something I had to do because I couldn't afford to like feed him. And I would have been able to even do it without Kalani either, because I remember Kalani coming home. She was the DM for Aldi. And so she opened up all of Central California for Aldi, the largest grocery store in the world. And she was in charge of all of their Northern California expansion. And so she would randomly come visit me, and she'd come with these huge packs of fucking like squeezable baby food. And like that would be like Zeno lived off of that shit for a long period of time, just because like it was like extra food that we could feed him. But it was rice, bananas, Spam. I'd have to donate plasma for like rent money. I remember having to sell all of my old Fresno State gear just to pay my rent. At my presentation at Deal Champs, I'll talk about when I was working for another investor. I made $5,000 with this like 6-unit apartment complex. He must have made a fucking rip on it, because like I was thinking back to it, and I was like, man, I only made $5,000. But in order for Alan, who's a pretty like, I don't want to say stingy, but he's very disciplined with his finances, to give me $5,000 on a deal when our agreement was like $1,500, he must have made a fucking rip on that thing, right? And I went with my first $5,000, and I went and bought a Gucci headband. And then right before And then right as I quit working for him, I was like, fuck, I gotta sell this bitch because I'm about to go broke and homeless and I need to fucking pay my rent. So I had to sell that bitch on eBay.
You were growing up, but you were still a dude in your 20s. Get your first decent check. You're like,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
Gucci
funny.
then right off the bat. Well, okay, I wanna bring this back because right, the topic of today. Obviously, we're gonna get into deal champs in a bit, because I'm super excited about that. But for people who are just getting started, so a lot of people who come to us are people who are just getting started, right? They're brand new in their business. Maybe they haven't even launched yet. Or they've been in the mix. They've been in the beginner phase, like they're kind of lost in this no man's land for quite a bit of time. You said something, or your friend said something to you, and that was you either do it or you die. And so for people who are constantly coming to us, and I know Marlon specifically, because Marlon does high performance coaching, is for the people who have a hard time starting. They've got a hard time, finding the motivation, finding the discipline. It's like, I'll keep pushing it off. And like, I want to, but like, do you really want to? Versus you were in a position where it's like, dude, you do it or you die. Now, what is your advice to people who are like on the fence, or they've been trying to start, they're just having a hard time getting launched, like the failure to launch kind of syndrome? What's your take on that, dude?
All right, I'm gonna give advice that you guys probably aren't gonna like, but I'm gonna tell you to stay the fuck out of the game because you can't take it. Because you're gonna hop into the game with someone like me, and yes, we are friends, but my goal is to feed my family, make lots of money, and I'll rip your fucking throat out. Because every person who was the first person to like set their family up was a cutthroat. If you go and study all of the best entrepreneurs of all time, not the second generation, but the first generation who actually made the money and set the family up, they were ruthless.
Mm.
My job is to be ruthless for my family. And then number two, you aren't going to be able to take the ups and the downs. I lose $50 to $100,000 a year on these stupid ass businesses that I start and then fail, or I want to pivot out of them. You guys say like I have so much business experience. It's because I've gone and started all of these companies, gotten my balls absolutely kicked in, lost a bunch of money, and then I'm like, okay, like we aren't going to do that anymore. But then I go do a different one in the next year to where I think I'm 22. I was talking about this today. I've started like 7 to 9 businesses. Only 2 of them have gotten to 7 figures. But like we've had lots of other stuff to where like, okay, I started this one. Oh shit. All right, we just lost a bunch of money on that one. Okay, whatever, we'll back, and then we'll go start something else. And then we'll go start something else. And then it'll all suck. And so if you have a hard time just getting started, imagine how hard it is when payroll's coming up, you don't have any money in your account, and you have to figure out how am I going to make sure that everybody who relies on me gets fed on Wednesday. That's a different type of mindset. And again, like you may not necessarily be starting like a big business, but that is the nature of entrepreneurship, to where you are going to have a lot of ups and downs, especially if you're going into real estate, because that title company is going to fuck up your deal that you thought was going to close this week, and now it's out for another 3 weeks, and your money's just not coming in anymore.
So what I'm hearing, right? And by the way, Strat, I agree with that. Like that is your advice is on par with this channel. So you are fitting in right perfectly in place, because these are some of the things we say to people. It's like, look, entrepreneurship, believe it or not, I truly believe it's not for everybody, because you are going to get your teeth smashed in. And so from what I'm hearing you, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying you get into this game knowing damn well that there will be points in times where you will lose. You know damn well there are going to be times where life will kick you while you're down, and there will be suffering involved, right? And it will be you're going to have to go through the crucible effectively, and you still choose to get into it because effectively it sounds like the pain of not taking care of your family is more painful than the pain that you know you're going to experience by doing business.
I would say now it's always to take care of your family, but it's like, what the fuck else am I going to do? I've never had a job. I can't go get a job now. Like I couldn't go get hired for the life of me. Like I am an unemployable degenerate. Like I couldn't get a job at Home Depot coming out of college, right? Like when I got that job for that investor, I was applying to all sorts of different places as just like while it was like my senior year in college, and I couldn't get a job at Home Depot. And I was like, oh my God, is this what this fucking is? Like, this is crazy. So like, let alone now trying to get a job.
Yep.
to where if you're like, and I think one thing that a lot of people need to come to terms with, are you okay with your thoughts being all encompassed with the one thing that you are trying to accomplish? And then are you okay with the stress? And if you're not, it's okay. And I don't like how everybody talks down on being an employee, because there's amazing world-class number twos, and they may just not have the vision for it, but they can go and execute at an extremely high level. And we need those people too. We need number threes, we need number fours. As long as you're holding yourself to a high standard,
Yep.
you may not want the fucking stress, bro. You shouldn't have to. Not everybody wants to wear the fucking cross on their back and say, I'm ready to get after it.
I got a question for you. How do you mentioned before that you've had 7, 8, 9 businesses, only 2 of them ever crossed the 7-figure mark, but you're an all-in person, right? So when you start something, you are effectively all in. You're not expecting it to fail, you're expecting it to pop off. How do you deal with being all in on something and then getting to that point of failure and realizing it's time to pivot versus maybe I need to dig deeper? Because that's a skill set that you have to learn as well. It's like, when do I hold on and when do I let go? How are you determining when it's time to pivot?
Um, so to make this like apply to all of your listeners, if you're just in real estate, you should probably never let go. You should probably just keep spending money and getting better, because it's going to work. For like other companies that we started, so we've had a mastermind company, we've had a coaching company, we have our self-storage, we have our rental portfolio, we've had our social media company, we've had our call center, we've had our wholesaling company. What else have we had? I've had my home inspection business. Like, we've had a list of these things. I would say, so like last year when our ERC stuff, like, the government had announced that they're not going to pay out the rest of these funds for a long period of time. They said they're going to shut it down for a couple months. It'd been like 6 months. We weren't getting anything paid out whatsoever. And so I had to have a call with my friend who was doing the same thing. And we grew that company pretty big. And he was like, Stratton, either we shut this down or you go bankrupt, bro, because we can't keep shelling out cash, waiting for all this money to come in. Move on. And so I did that. And then I was like, okay, what's next? And we started the 7-figure challenge. And it took me about like 2 weeks from shutting that whole thing down, letting go of the employees that we need to let go of in that company, and then keeping the ones who I knew I could, like, okay, you're good, I could place you here. You're good, I could place you here. You're good, I could place you here. All right, sweet, let's do that. Get it rolling, and then it's up and rolling and then running again. But you can't sit there and wait on those losses. And Tony Robbins talks about this. The biggest difference between like the best winners and the mediocre winners is how long you spend on your loss.
Mm.
Because you're going to take a bunch of them, and like, think about all the people who never recovered from like 2008, and they sit there and they still talk about 2008 like it was like, oh, I just never financially recovered. And like, you got that what is it, Joe Exotic meme, right? I'll never financially recover from this. But all it is just them talking to themselves on a consistent basis, and it goes into that mindset thing. So for me, like, a lot of it may be forced. With our social media company, we learned that an operator was stealing money from us and that he lied about his mother being dead. We sent him a bunch of money for her funeral, and then his girlfriend was working for us, and our head of HR was talking to his girlfriend, and she somehow ratted out her boyfriend saying, well, his mom didn't actually die. He's just like taking a break. I was like, what the fuck? And he was operating that company. We were incubating. It was only at like $10,000 a month. It was profitable. But then, and like, we had some like big name clients, and we were going after one really, really big name, like 8 and 9-figure entrepreneur who I thought we could sign on. But then that happened. And I was like, bro, I'm not going to hop in here and do this shit. Like, just shut it down, take the employees that are good, and let's move them over somewhere else and let's keep it going. And so you kind of learn if you're good with people and good with leadership. And once you get a certain point of delegation, then you know, like, who are like the good people who fit the culture that I'm trying to build.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just hold on to those people. Looking back, I learned that, and I shouldn't have, because I should have just dialed in on one thing instead of having like so many different things going on. And me and Sam talked about this last night. But again, it's shown me over time. But for your listeners, and this is primarily all real estate, it is all if you just keep going, bro, it's gonna work. I just say the majority of the people don't want to put the work in and like develop the skills.
Yep.
Because majority of the time it is just getting better on the phones. And if you're not a phones person, then you need to give up some equity and get someone on the phones, and then you need to be able to handle absolutely everything else. Because at the beginning, nothing else really matters. Because once the company's set up, an integrator is not necessarily as needed in the real estate space once it's like really set up, especially as a partner, because then I could see there being some resentment if that person is consistently working in that business and then you think you're all high and mighty and I'm just the visionary and I'm not doing anything, and you move on to the next thing. And I've seen that blow up partnerships too.
Especially in wholesale. Oh my God, don't get me started on this. But I want to hit on some things. I want to bring this back a little bit, especially because people who are getting into the mix. A couple things that you mentioned that I think people need to hear again. You mentioned about, for people who are having, guys, if you've been in the industry for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and you still haven't done a deal, and you still haven't, or you haven't done 2 or 3, you have this failure to launch scenario and you haven't been able to grow. Stratton's advice is just get the hell out of the game. Stay out of the game. Go do something else that's easier for you.
Or work for someone else.
Or work
you
for
may
someone
just
else.
not be good at
I
what
like
you're
to
doing.
work for someone else.
Right. And it's like,
folks.
Change the vehicle, right? Try to change the vehicle, whatever it is. And you mentioned something. The guys who are at the top of the game and the guys who are the ones who, Ed Milet calls them the one, right? The one to change the lineage, the bloodline, the history of everything, because they're the first ones to have this transcendent effect. They are cutthroat. And what people don't realize is that the biggest names in the game who shout collaboration over competition from the rooftops, and they truly do collaborate like heck. But when you get to have personal relationships with them, and some of them we have really good relationships with, the interesting thing is this: online, they're phenomenally, compassionate, and empathetic, and sweet, and they look like they couldn't hurt a fly. When you get to know them, oh my God, they are mercenaries with their time, their attention, who they're willing to just absolutely just, and it's not like they'll come after you, but if you are in a competition with them, they are, I'm going to kind of, riff off of Tim Grover here. They're relentless. And so it's like, these are the people who, it's so funny. I saw this thing a long time ago. It was like, imagine your worst your worst competitor, like the guy who does everything that you don't do. In terms of he does everything to the best possible. He shows up on time. He works 60 hours a week. He works on his skill sets. The guy who's there to put you out of business. The problem is that guy's real, and they are out there. And they're people who, to Stratton's point, they've got responsibilities. They've got families to feed. They've got to them, they're on Marlon, you know this. Some of these people, when you meet them, they're not here to make money. They are here for a mission that is almost divine. Yep. And they have so much conviction in it. They will freaking crush you if you're half-assing it and competing for the same prize. And so while I firmly do believe in collaboration over competition, it doesn't mean that competition doesn't exist. And so when I see people who are in the failure to launch syndrome, I'm always just you just don't want it enough. Your life doesn't suck enough for this to be the only way forward. And to your point, you were like, dude, you're a unemployable delinquent or something to that effect. Degenerate, whatever you said. But I've always had this phrase that I'm forever unemployable. And I have a freaking master's degree that I graduated with highest honors for. I am extremely employable based on my resume, but it's for me, it's this shit works or I'm going to die. That is it. It is, I win this game or I die. There is no go back to a job, go back to a career. It's this is the game because I have to be the one. And so guys, it's funny. We don't hear enough of this energy. And I think this is why Marlon and I really gravitate towards people like Stratton, especially in the real estate space, is because I think the real estate space publicly can be a very kumbaya campfire kind of space. But guys, this is the reality. To Stratton's point, you and I had dinner. We knew last year was a difficult year for your business and for some of your businesses. The ERC stuff with the government, there's a lot of things outside of your control that happen. You have partners that screw you over. And then you mentioned the people who, and oh my God, when you said this, I'm not going to name them, but a very specific person who we all know came to my brain when you said, the person who hasn't financially recovered from 2008 and 15 years later, they're still talking about 2008. It's crippling for them. it's very often not the financial, like economic thing that crucifies people in this industry or cripples them, I should say. Very often, it's like the partner that screws you over. There's a certain someone who we all know who I know 5 years ago was screwed over by their partner. To this day, they talk about that person screwing them over every other conversation they have. And I'm
It's
like,
crazy.
bro, you
It's
haven't,
crazy.
yeah, you haven't seen this person in 4 or 5 years. And like, what's crazy is like, they probably did screw you over. They probably like are terrible human beings, but they're winning because they're making millions and you're busy not launching, not doing what you need to do because you're too busy hung up. And this is something that we talked about at dinner last night is there is a large group of people, and it's maybe people are just wired differently. It's people are very quick to own the wins, but they love to deflect the losses and say it's someone else's fault. And it's like, versus with the people who make it, it's like, dude, if I win, it's on me. I'll show gratitude to the people who helped me out, but it's on me. If I lose, it's no one else's fault. It's still on me.
Yep.
So I'm going to take it on the chin and I'm going to freaking move forward. And so that is awesome. I just had to get that out. That, guys, it's so funny. And it's why I appreciate. And if you guys haven't, like Stratton's Instagram is right there on his little nameplate. Get on his Instagram because I've never seen, or I haven't seen very many people give the raw commentary that business owners need to hear. And it's the reality of it.
Yep.
Like you will, and this is another thing that we talked about last night. I had a former friend who made $30,000 in 3 deals in her first 30 days of starting. And then here's a reality.
Terrible.
Guys, I said this last night, and then it was funny because before I could even say it, Stratton was like, he said terrible. It was probably the worst thing that could have ever happened to that person.
Yep.
They, in their first 30 days, they did 3 deals and then they made 30 grand. And then what ended up happening? Realism caught up. And then for 3-4 months, crickets, because that's what's supposed to happen. You know what happened? Even though they have the best proof of concept ever that this shit works, they couldn't hang with the low. Now they're working a corporate job.
Exactly. I think it's, yeah, that's a whole nother. It's so sports showed me that I can work really hard at something over a long period of time and I can get the desired result. So like if you think about that, if any of you guys are athletes, you guys know what it's like to develop a skill over time, see that skill improve, and then put that skill to use and make a play and then win. It sounds like a crazy concept, but like it's what you get from practicing so much at sports to a lot of people don't get this. Like that's why I think everyone's kids should be in sports, or even like I want my kids to be in debate, something to where like you have to develop a skill. That skill has to be challenged, and then that skill can consistently grow. And then eventually you can use that skill to get what you want financially, achievement wise or whatever.
Well, you know what's funny? I think people understand this they understand this intellectually, but they don't understand it experientially. And like, whereas athletes, we get it, right? Or anyone that's done anything like you mentioned, whether it's debate club, whenever you've had to develop a skill, and most importantly, that skill was challenged. And you know, it's funny, Strat. Earlier you were saying, I forgot what you were saying exactly, but my brain just immediately alarmed, and it was like, yeah, we don't give out participation trophies in the real world. And we've got a culture, we got a generation that, you know, grew up on some participation trophies that you were rewarded for simply just being present, which is, look, I believe on a spiritual level, we're all equal. On like the level of the soul, every man is the same, every woman is the same on the soul level. But in the marketplace, we're not equal.
Exactly.
In the marketplace, somebody is better, somebody is worse. There's a first place, there's a second place, there's a third place, and first place is the only winner. Just being honest. And when we get into business, what's interesting is I find there's not a lot of that mindset anymore of I want to be the best at what I do. I'm never going to forget this. And Sam, I don't think you even know this. When I was in elementary school, I'm not kidding, I remember this. It's scarred into my mind. 3rd grade, teachers asked the class, what does everybody want to be? And my answer was basic, just like everyone else's. I want to be an astronaut. Someone else was like, I want to be a firefighter. I had a buddy, Xavier, and Xavier's answer has stayed in my mind since the 3rd grade. He said, teacher, I don't know yet what I want to be, but when I decide, I know I want to be the best at it.
What a great
That,
parent.
bro,
What a great fucking parent right there.
dude, third grade. And real talk, like Xavier's still one of those people that I keep tabs on in my life, like from a childhood friend. And I'm watching him, and guess what? He excels at everything he does because he makes up his mind. I don't need to be the best in the world, but if I'm doing something, I need to be the best at what I do. If I'm selling a $30 widget, I'm the best $30 widget in the marketplace. If I'm out here flipping burgers, I'm the best burger flipper. Where is that mindset? So I love that you brought that back up because we do need to bring a little bit of a return of that sort of energy because that's the energy that does go out and creates no matter what. And so I'm curious because earlier you mentioned that as you pivoted, one thing I heard as a trend is you'd pivot from a business. This isn't working anymore. This is working, but there was this commonality of, who are the good players on our team? Let's make sure we bring the good players with us into the next endeavor. What are you doing to identify good players inside of your world? What have you started to identify as characteristics of good players that you look for and that also you look to embody in yourself?
Oh, what do I want with good players? I'd say just number one, and it sounds crazy, you want like good emotional intelligence. And I have a very different philosophy on leadership because I come from like a football background to where I do not think your team is your like business is a family. With family, if I have a son with Down syndrome, I'm going to take care of him. If I run a sports team and I draft a kid with Down syndrome as a running back and he's never played football before, I'll get fucking fired, bro. That's not what we do here. And there's nothing wrong with the kid with Down syndrome, but like that puts that dynamic in your head.
Yeah.
To where is this a family? Because in a family, obviously we are going to love and care for him, and he's going to be in our family for the rest of our lives, and he's going to be an amazing part of our family. If I'm the GM for the fucking Raiders, I'm fired. You're not wasting our first round pick. Yeah, you can do like a free agent pick. Let's make a PR story out of it, and we can have him around the team at all times. But we can't have him on the field because that's not what he's good at. It's just the nature of the beast. And so with that, like I want someone who's working hard, high emotional intelligence. And the biggest thing is like I want them to excel at something that they've done before. I want them to have drive and like they want to do something outside of work, or like they're really striving to do something outside of work, or just have goals. Most people don't have goals. To where if you have, go ahead, Sam.
It's so funny. You remind me of Phil Jackson, who was the legendary NBA coach for the Chicago Bulls when Jordan had his insane run. And it was funny because arguably, I'm not going to get into the politics of sports here, but arguably one of the best teams like of all time, and especially one of the best lineups. But here's the interesting thing, to your point, it was not a family. In the team, it was like pseudo cutthroat in the locker room because everyone was basically competing with each other to push each other to like own their spot and not give it up. And so the fun fact is the same thing goes. And like, guys, sometimes people they'll hear my take on the fact that I, especially for sales positions, law enforcement, military, or not like, I don't care if you played high school sports, like collegiate at the minimum level. Cause like, I don't care if you were on JV, like if you were JV like, or if you were varsity in junior year of high school 20 years ago, like, it doesn't really matter to me. I care about like the experience level that comes out once you go to the collegiate level.
4 years are very transformative, bro.
Dude. And then one thing that you realize at the collegiate level is you will be experienced to talent that makes you look like crap, and you have usually never experienced. No matter how good you are as a young athlete, until you get to college, especially at D1, and then because like my background was in tennis, then you get all these dudes from freaking Europe who, for whatever reason, have some God-given innate talent that just makes them beat. And then you're like, oh, it's not that they're physically stronger than me or faster than me or they know more about the game than I do. They are just better. And then you unlock a level of yourself that's like, all right, it's now on me because like I'm not as good as them. And to Stratton's point, like I have to become obsessive to even catch up just to hang. Yeah. Like the shit that these guys make look easy, I have to put 8 hours a day in on the off days just to be able to hang with what they make look easy. And I'm like redlining at this point. And so, but the point of all of this, guys, the best teams, the championship teams, they're not families. They'll talk about each other like families once they've won the championships, they've all retired, they look back at it very fondly. And like, yeah, we love all those guys. But in the moment, like, they are absolute killers. And the same thing goes for the military. The same thing goes for law enforcement. When you look at the military and law enforcement and they're in the academies and they're training up to come up together, they're very much like, it feels like a family, and like they'll, even take bullets for each other and they'll go into war for each other, this, that, and the other. But the reality is, like, as soon as you don't make your, like, you don't hit your tests, if your PT falls through, your academic scores fall through, whatever, like whatever test you're prepping for, you don't hit it, like, your ass is on a plane going back home because you just didn't make the cut. We love you, but you didn't make the cut. And so, oh my God. And then this is what people don't realize, guys. It's that, and this is, I think, to the point for people who are starting, especially in the real estate space, guys, a lot of people, they don't want to pay overhead. They don't want to have payroll. They don't want to have, all these hard costs associated with doing real business. So they play the game of like, oh, I'm just going to have everyone on commission and everyone's going to get paid on a JV and everyone's going to be a 1099. And like, as long as we make money and the deal closes, then everyone gets paid. All that's going to happen is for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and for a lot of people for a lifetime, they will be stuck in the gray dead zone of being, honestly, these weird wantapreneurs who want to be CEOs, who want to run businesses. They think they're in businesses, but like, none of it's serious. And the problem with that approach is there are guys like Stratton who from day one, well, I'm gonna go and have overhead. I'm gonna go hire top level talent. And then for us, like, here's why I am someone, one of our portfolio businesses that gets a lot of my attention. Someone texted me like, hey, are you aware of this company? They're a competitor. They're basically trying to rip off everything we're doing. And I'm like, no. And they're like, why? I said, because I know the owner. I know of him. I know his story. I have heard a lot of things behind the scenes. And I'm like, he's paying his people minimum wage. And they're like, why does that matter? I'm like, because our people are on full-time salaries with full-time benefits, with health, with dental for their kids. We're matching contributions to the retirement accounts. And we've been doing this for a long time. We're not playing the same game. They can come up and have maybe a little bit of headlining right now, and they may steal some attention. But in the grand scheme of things, they will not compete because we're just taking this seriously to a whole other level.
And they just won't last.
It's like,
it's hard.
Dude,
it goes into that A+ talent thing. Like, the company won't last because the culture is not there, and especially not in like a service business. Like in a service business, you have to build out so much back-end infrastructure from a cultural standpoint that like needs that thing to like live and breathe. To where if you go in and you try to like skimp stuff, it's gonna be terrible. What did I have? To where in the real estate space, yeah, you can do it with like really low overhead and with VAs, and like that's what we do in our real estate company. But you got to be good, I would say, is like the biggest thing. To where one of my friends, he does nets $80K a month. He's all direct to agent, and majority of his sales reps are commission only. But then he's hiring 6 VAs through us right now as like agent callers out of South America. And that's his overhead. But that's his really only overhead. But bro, he worked at Keegley for 4 years. So he's good. Like he understood that model completely. And so he knows how to execute at a very, very high level. And then the people who are commission only, he just gave his boys a shot at working for him, and they make 30% commission. And so like you're still going to give up something.
Yep.
To where you just need to understand, and this is gonna, I don't want to be like a dick. You just need to understand like how the model's going to work in your head and how the incentives will work. Because you can structure it that way, but you need to understand you're going to give up a certain amount of margin in order for that business to thrive. And then you need to go for more mass market than you should go for like really big deals. You should go for a lot of deals if that's what you're doing, because you're not going to have very high margins. But then you deal with that because you don't have high margins. That's okay, because then you don't have any type of cash conversion cycle that you have to deal with. So like with our real estate company, we have very little overhead, but out the gate, we lose 40% due to our partners. But at the same time, I have no cash conversion. And so it's a true cash flowing business. Every dollar that comes out of that is just essentially more dollars. And then we know other free marketing methods. But I was able to set it up that way because I understand the incentives that I need to put in place in order for that company to operate that way. And so I tell you at the beginning, start off doing it the way that everybody else does it, because that's the way that works. And then once you do it that way, then you can start to experiment with your own little and be, because I feel like being an entrepreneur is like being an artist. Like you're a mechanical artist is like the best way I could describe the way I think about business. Then once you set it up the way you like it and it's working, then you can explore those other options. But if you're just getting going, bro, you can't avoid, you need to pay the stupid tax, which is going to be like $5,000 if you're in real estate. You're going to pay a stupid tax because you've never done it before. You pay to go to college to learn something. You're going to pay the market to learn something. And then after that stupid tax, now you're probably going to get into the game a little bit, and then you're still going to need to reinvest cash month over month over month until you can figure out, okay, how can I get this going in a way that fits the company that I want to build? And I mean, this is before you start a business, build a company that you want to fit your life.
Yep.
Don't build your life around the company. Or like just
That's-
know what that company is going to do and how it's going to serve you. And it may not be some billion-dollar company, but you should just be real with yourself of what you're building, because you will run into Sam or me or Marlon, to where Sam is very laser focused on that one company. This other dude sounds like he's doing it like part-time, and he's just doing it like skimpy. I have just seen people fall out completely because they try and compete with the dude who is full-time, who is locked in, who is completely investing back into his team. The customer knows and feels that customer experience with that person, with that company. And so you just need to be cognizant. And it goes, and we can loop this all back into the thing of you're in the game now, so you better like pony up and do it the right way, or else you're just going to get buried anyways.
It's, I love that you said it. It's like in the beginning, do what you have to do with the resources, limitations that you have, and make the most out of it. But the second that you start getting traction and momentum, it's like don't fix what ain't broken, but you have to start. And this is the thing, right? So many people, they get the reward of doing direct to agent or on market, and they'll do a deal every other month and make an extra 10 grand here and there. And like, awesome. Then they have these visions of grandeur where they're like, I want to make 50 grand a month. I want to make 100 grand a month. I want to run $1 million business, blah, 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 blah. And the problem is you're kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, right? And this is people who've done a few deals, but they've only done a few deals, maybe a few times a year. And the difference ends up just being, how in are you? And when the time is right, you have to have the self-awareness to know when to start investing more. And actually, like, okay, cool. We've done the freeway. We've made money. It took us 6 months to get our first deal, but we've done it. Now we've done a few more. We've done 3, 4, 5 deals. We've got the money. We've got the know-how. I understand how to do deals. I understand how to structure creative financing, this, that, and the other. The question ends up being, if you're sitting on 80,000, should we start investing? Because you could say, no, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Great. Problem is, there was another guy who started the same cohort that you did, the same time that you did. He has that same 80,000. Here's the difference. He's going to take that 80. He's going to roll it right back in. He's going to hire good talent. He's going to invest in good systems. He's going to bring in a fractional whoever to help him start understanding how to think like a real chief executive officer. And all of these things end up being things that you have to compete for in the marketplace. And so it's actually really interesting, man. It's to your point. I'm like, dude, I would hate having to like be a newbie, half-assing it, and then coming up against Stratton or someone like Stratton. But the reality is this, guys, whether you realize Stratton's out there or not is irrelevant. Stratton and guys like him are there. They're there in every industry. Every micro niche industry, there is a Stratton who is absolutely treating this like it is the only thing that matters. And they're in that kind of realm or that headspace of like, we do this or we die. And so I'm like,
what my favorite thing about this conversation is right now, and I'm so happy people are listening and people are tuning in. And by the way, guys, if you're getting value right now while you're listening, do me a favor, drop some fire emojis in the chat. I want to know if you're paying attention, if this is resonating with you, because what I like is oftentimes we don't get the insight behind the thought process of founders and CEOs until after they're dead, until after someone's wrote an autobiography about them. And right now you're seeing the dynamic nature of character that can exist, which is, if anyone's ever met Stratton, if anyone's ever met Sam in person, you guys know these guys, awesome people. I mean, like, they would take the shirt off their back and hand it to you if you were cold. They would take care of you. And so you're looking at them and you're like, man, these are some kind individuals. And at the same time, to listen and understand that there's a switch that we all have the ability to turn on. And I call it the kill switch, right? There's a kill switch that can turn on that says, all right, now we're playing the game. And the point of playing the game is to win. The point of playing the game is to achieve the objective. And we're able to snap into that mode and at the same time still come back and be kind and be have integrity. And I think about this, and you guys have heard this before. It's better to be a warrior in a garden than to be a gardener in the war. And so,
Well, if you're a gardener in the war, you're worthless.
Useless.
It does no good to it does no good to say, oh, I'd beat that dude's ass, but you have no fucking vengeance in you. It does nothing for you. You need to be able to have that switch. And this goes into like, if you're a man, you need, and this just goes into very primal, you need to be able to protect your family.
Yep.
You need, and it's that primal switch inside of you to where you need to have that, bro. But I don't want to poo-poo people's dreams because not everybody's out here trying to like build like $1 billion company.
No.
Just be real with yourself. If you're like, hey, bro, I want to do 2-3 deals a year and I honestly love my job, more power to you. Not everybody is built to like go out here and be autistically obsessed like we talk about. But if that is you, don't let this derail you from what you want to achieve. And I'll use my friend Jason. Me and Sam went to dinner with Jason the other day and called this like 2019, 2020. I know all the biggest real estate investors in the country. I know most of them. And one of them was like bragging about like how much revenue they did. And Jason, I know, did more net profit than a $5 million company. And Jason did it with like 2 VAs and like doing direct mail and cold calling. And he outsources cold calling to us. So like you can build something you want, and it doesn't your business doesn't need to look like anybody else's. If I was going to talk to people about like when you're just getting started, you don't need a partner, you just need a good assistant. And your business does not need to look like anybody else's as far as like, oh, we're going for the moon, we're going for revenue. The only thing that matters is how much money is in your bank account at the end of the month and how much of it can you actually spend. Like how much of it is allocated and how much of it is actually going to go and pay your bills.
Dude, bottom line over top line all day. Let's do this because we're running up on time. So good. And oh my God, I could talk for an hour about like vanity metrics. I'm like, no one talks about net profits, and net profits are the only thing that matter at the end of the day. And fun fact, guys, like most 99% of businesses in terms of like non-real estate are not valued based on like the top line. It doesn't matter. Like those 5 million businesses that do $200,000 profit, like they're horrible businesses and they're very much not worth much at all. So, but here's the thing for people who are starting, I think it's so important for people who are starting to be around the right ecosystem. Mm-hmm. Like I do think a lot of the people who have a failure to launch syndrome, very often I will tell them to go audit their circle, to audit their influence, audit who they're hanging around with. And I see that you can take the same person who has a failure to launch syndrome and just Marlon and I, we talk about this a lot, environmental design, take them out of their current marketplace, their current ecosystem, their environment, you know, where they have all of these random people around them influencing them a certain way, and then take them, drag them over here, put them in a room full of executors. And within 6 months, their mindset will be different. The way they approach life will be different. And the results very often will be different too. And this is a perfect segue into this. You guys, Jason Pritchard, who I have so much respect and admiration for. And then he's not in Fresno right now, but our homeboy Dean, who's in San Diego. You guys are bringing to Central California an epic event. You guys did it last year. You guys have done it twice now. This will be a third time, right?
I think we've done it. This is the second annual Deal Champs Summit, but we had 2 or 3 big events. Like
before. I remember yes. And now we're going to be at Table Mountain again the second time. So here's the cool thing with the Deal Champs Summit. Actually, give us like a minute spiel on what the Deal Champs Summit is, because Marlon's bringing it up right now.
Oh, there we go. Look at that landing page.
That's fire. That's fire.
The Deal Champ Summit, honestly, bro, it just started off with us with our meetups, and then just us giving back to the Central Valley community. I mean, so that picture right there of me, Zuber, Henry, and Dean, I think that's like 3 times ago, and that's like 400, 500 people, I think. And then we did another one with Carlos Reyes, and then we did another one with Pacer and Jamil. And so we just wanted to bring really, really crazy world-class speakers to Central California so people could come learn from them, network, because no one does anything like this in Central California. So I've known Pace for a while, and he's amazing. His wife Laura is amazing. Dolph DeRoos is an amazing international developer. Zuber's been retired for almost 10 years now, and he has a portfolio of like 200 houses in Fresno. And he's like, I retired. He did tech sales, and he's a really, really good macro guy. Marlon, I learned a lot of macro thinking from him by watching his YouTube channel for like a year.
Yep.
Rich, another person who built a business a different way. They do insane numbers, novation wise, and I learned how to do novations from him. Gary Harper, who's like the #1 business coach in real estate, I would say. Austin Hancock, huge portfolio out in Oklahoma City. My man Terry Summers in that terrible fucking photo, but he didn't want to just a headshot, and so we had to use this one. And he's like the single family king out in Columbus, Ohio. An amazing friend, honestly. And then Braithen Stollenberger, one of the top, if not the top producing agent in Fresno, California, who's getting into investing. And then Trevor Mock. I think Trevor is, if you love mindset, Trevor is an amazing mindset guy, bro. An amazing, like, he's a guru, I would say. He's like a Yoda. He's a little bit shorter. He's amazing, dude. When I went out to a couple years ago, me and my girlfriend took like a 45-day trip in a fifth wheel across the West Coast, and we spent like 3 or 4 days with Trevor out in Roseburg. It was amazing. And then we have Pat Hilton. But all these guys are going to be all at the VIP party, and so you get to network with them. It'll be amazing. We all personally know every single one of these people, which is one thing that I love. Every single one of the speakers who's ever came and spoke, we've all known them personally. So I think that's one thing that's awesome, is like we know the character of that person. We know that they are going to absolutely bring a ton of value. We know that they care. And bro, no one else does stuff like this for Central California. No one even does anything like this in the Bay. You can even say in LA, I haven't seen anybody do anything big like this.
Nobody.
And so like we throw the premier event honestly on the West Coast. Pacer decided, I don't know where he's throwing his huge one right now, but Pacer's the only person I know who like does stuff like this anymore.
No one does it with the emphasis being on the community, not the emphasis being on something else, on the people, the hosts receiving. And so, guys, I'm stoked. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there at the VIP party. I'm going to be there attending. I want to support. Obviously, we've got, and fun fact that you didn't realize, I've had, including, I think Rob Wensley is going to be speaking to on InvestLift and stuff.
It's because Rob waited so long to fucking commit. That's why he's not on there, because he waited forever to commit.
Well, here's the thing, guys. Rob Wensley, Stratton, Dean, Laura, Dolph DeRoos, who I think is so criminally underrated because he's phenomenal at what he does. Also one of the coolest speakers and storytellers I've personally ever met. I've had 5 of those people on my separate podcast, The Origin Story, and these are people that I am fascinated by. And so I'm excited that, dude, you didn't realize it. I remember seeing the lineup and I'm like, dude, he just brought Origin Story to the Central California. He just didn't realize it. So I loved it. So this is what I want to do, because I want to be able to support you, and I want to be able to support mentors of mine like Pace and Laura, who I adore. I want to be able to pay for people's tickets. So what we're going to do today, you guys already know this, I've already talked about it on social media. I'm going to be buying a bunch of tickets to give away to y'all. Not the VIP, because I don't got that type of money. But if you guys want to go VIP, because I think you guys are running a sale right now. I think I just got an ad for it. You guys are running a sale. I think it's like 25% off, right?
Yep.
And so if you guys want to go VIP, you guys want to hang out with all of us doing the VIP stuff, that's where like the real fun is, in my opinion. That's where you really get the best connections. What I'm going to do, for everyone here who can make it, the event is April 4th and 5th. 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 4th So in like a week and a half, a week and a half,
Yep.
April 4th and 5th, if you're in California and you know, or you can make it to California, you can make it out to Fresno, California for 2 days. You got to figure out your flights. You got to figure out your hotel, this, that, and the other. If you can make it, I will pay for your ticket.
Let's go.
And I'll do that today. I'll do it tonight. So here's what you have to do. Simple, because I'm here to support Stratton and all the people there who I absolutely love. All you have to do is don't worry about me and Marlon. Me and Marlon will receive. We'll get what we need. All I want you guys to do is make sure you're following Stratton on Instagram. That's huge. Just because his Instagram content is fire and it's funny and it's awesome. That's all you have to do. Once you've done that, DM me on Instagram, say done. I will check. I will literally go one by one to make sure you are actually following Stratton. You do that, and if you can make it, I will buy your ticket today for the event. Cool?
Cool. Let's
And
do
this
it.
is the official page. So if you find any other page, you're at the wrong spot. So we're going to the official Strat Daddy on IG. That's Daddy with 2 Y's. All right, you're going to know you're at the right one when you see that Sam, myself, Ingrid, all the OGs are following him. Right? Like when you see the one that all the OGs are following, you found the right page.
Huge. Guys, get that done. Get that done today. Like literally today. Send that to me today so I can get your tickets in. Once you guys do that, and last thing, guys, I think Stratton brought a ton of value. I think Stratton also told us things that we needed to hear. Very often we kind of escape like the harsh truths, and the harsh truths are the things that really like are what allow people to succeed. And I think Stratton leads with them. It's so funny. Every time I talk with Stratton will call me out on like the dumb shit I do or like the dumb mindset blocks that I may have. He'll call me out right off the bat because he knows I need to hear it. He knows I need to be challenged. And so guys, I think you need to be around better ecosystems. I think you need better people in your circle. Guys like Stratton, Jason, Dean. The last thing, Marlon, do you have any homework for them outside of getting a free ticket?
Dude, my homework is very much the same homework that you guys receive from me every week, which is this. You show up to this podcast. First off, we have the analytics, and it still blows my mind how many people watch week after week. You show up and you don't hit the subscribe button. It blows my mind, right? So first off, hit the subscribe button if you're watching on my channel, if you're watching on Sam's channel, or do me a favor. If you are watching on our channels and you're already subscribed and you're not subscribed to Stratton, go to Stratton's YouTube. Sam, can we put Stratton's YouTube link in the comments? I want you to go and subscribe to Stratton's YouTube. And so that's going to be number one. The second thing is I'm a big believer of pay it forward, right? There's this thing that when you go and you find something valuable, there's human nature that tells you to hoard it and to hold on to it. Yet the paradoxical thing about life is when you give out, you end up receiving more. So when you watch Sam and I come on here week after week after week, and you're like, man, these guys give so much value. Listen, we are giving it for free, but we understand the way the world works, the way the universe works. It comes back to us in other ways. And so what we want you to do is we want you to be able to receive that same reciprocal energy by sharing this with a friend. Take the time to not just say, all right, I retagged it on Instagram, but actually text it over to a friend and say, listen, I watched this episode. They were talking about, fuck all the participation trophies. We need to get our shit together. And I thought of you, and you're in my camp. You're on my team. You're not just my family. You're my teammate. So let's go after it and make 2025 the best year. And that's why I sent you this video. Watch it, and let's get after it tomorrow. Do that. Send that kind of message to somebody and wake them up so that you guys could crush it and be the people that change your lives. So on that note, I appreciate you all for being here. Stratton, I appreciate you for showing up, taking time out of your schedule, taking time away from your family and your business to be here with us and to share to our audience. And looking forward to Deal Champ Summits. I told you I'm going to confirm, see what my schedule looks like. I might be able to pop out there and kick it with you guys for a few days. So
just pop out, bro. What else are you doing, bro? You don't have kids.
Dude,
what else? You don't have kids, bro. You'll be fine.
Dude, Strat's one of those people that's worth it. Last year while I was doing a run across America, I literally stopped the run across America to hop on a plane because I had the opportunity to go hang out with him and a few other folks in California. So trust me when I say you want to be in this room. So guys, we'll be back here next week. Make sure you get the homework done. Make sure if you want free tickets, you are following Stratton on IG. You're sending a DM to Sam. You're letting him know you're done. In fact, Sam, make sure they screenshot the fact that they're following Stratton and they prove that they're following him. But guys,
You
we'll
already know.
see you all back.